Hello, I'm Deborah Sword.
Hi, I'm Tyson Bankert.
Tyson, the brain is really fascinating and complex. And I'd like to do an episode about how we can take care of our brain, use it to shape a conflict competent reality. So we're going to tame our brain. And I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but why don't we see if there's some conflict competent way that we can make our brain processes more obvious to us so that we can give them practice in taking care of us in high tension, high pressure conflict situations so that when we're in a situation of conflict, we can filter the message the brain is giving us and send back to it, yes, but I know the conflict competent thing to do here. How do we do that?
Yeah, it makes me think about like the brain can also be used as a conflict organ in a way, right? It's like our way of understanding and interpreting our ability to respond to conflict. And I think it also helps to create the reality that we are in, right? And so you think about, my dog Carl. When I make a sound and I say his name, Carl, he although he is smart, he doesn't actually hear me. It's just or hear his name being heard. What he really hears is a sound that he's understands as our communication between us, right? Um, and I think, the effect of it really conveys that our connection, but also it's based on sort of our ordinary routines that we've come to expect, right? Our brain patterns that we have. Um, and I think about so often that those types of interpretations and how we understand, we get really comfortable, right? Our brain is able to respond in really important ways. And I think about how can we then ensure that we also have our brain almost malleable and also responsive to conflict. I think it becomes a really, and the more we are able to adapt, the better opportunity we have to be more conflict competent.
That's a good point. The adaptation is that if we think about our brains as this automatic, it's constantly taking in sensory observations, making meaning of it, sending messages to us, and it happens so fast we're not aware of it. So, what we're talking about doing here, I think, is slowing it down, realizing that we have agency, that the brain is helping us interpret what's going on in our environment, but ultimately the decision about what to do with that information has to be within our conscious mind, not
Mhm.
on the brain's automatic pilot of uh, danger, danger, danger. And at that point, the decision goes back to us. The brain has alerted us that this conflict situation is happening. But then we have to realize we have choices. So Carl may not have agency. When Carl hears the sound of his name, he may hope it means a walk or a treat or playtime. But we have more agency than that. So in times of conflict, the decision making gets harder because the stakes are higher. We
Mhm.
might be in danger. The danger could be real, but we still have to make decisions. And all the brain does is predict what the risk is, that this situation is risky. That's a prediction, it's not a guarantee. So,
Yeah.
how do we train the brain?
Well, I think it kind of reminds me of a conflict that I actually ran into a few weeks ago when I was taking transit, where there was a conflict between two people on the train. I am someone who has worked in social service settings before. I felt fairly competent to just sort of inquire and ask, and I did, and it felt like a very kind of normal interaction that I was used to that maybe some other people on the train weren't because they haven't been, accustomed. Their brain isn't responsive to these types of things. Now, I will say I was actually wrong about what my brain was perceiving about the situation entirely. And what was interesting about that though was I was thinking about this and um I was also able to apologize or to, sometimes the brain does tend to lead you astray, oftentimes what's happening. And I think the conflict competence piece that we're trying to connect for folks, those who are listening, is that what's also your ability to still respond in that conflict competent way, even when you're wrong. And I think it was really helpful for me to kind of be able to understand, oh, my brain is telling me something that I think I've seen before, but I was ultimately not correct, but I was also able to rectify that by being able to still be conflict competent by apologizing and reassessing the situation.
And, that brings up for me that the brain and my brain and I have a connection like you and Carl. So you say the word Carl, my brain would say to me, danger. And in both cases, it's just a sound that tells me it's time to be alert, that something is going to happen that involves me. So I don't have that background that you have. So my brain might search memories for a similar situation and wouldn't find any. So I wouldn't know what to do. So maybe then my brain would think about movies I've seen. Maybe there's a script I can follow. Maybe you've told me a story and that's something I can apply in the situation. But when we're making predictions like our brain is, we rely on past experiences, what's happened in our past that we can apply to the situation in the present to try to keep us safe for the future. That's the way the brain works, seeking information to predict what message to send. But if the situation is novel, then we just have to look at what's the context and how much confidence do I have in my ability to react. And as you say, that's where we're in the conflict owner's manual territory, where you had the skills because you had practiced them, so you could apologize and you could apply that to the novel situation.
Yeah, it really is what you're really saying too is the value of not just kind of abandoning your brain to sort of the guesswork. It's really about building up the skill set and being able to feel confident and competent on those skills that you can continue to refer back to. And over time, you become like just like a muscle, you become stronger and stronger at being able to respond to it. And so I think like that it's really critical to allow for your brain to be more resilient to conflict.
So I think we've described sort of a three-step process. Be aware of how your brain works and the messages it sends, how it interprets it. Then, what are the skills you currently have that your brain can draw on when it needs to make good predictions? And then the third is where you don't have the skills, what can you practice? Uh, so, I'm not recommending you go out and look for conflict to give you brain practice. But when you're calm, when you're paying attention, when you're using your good skills, you're listening, and like you on the train, diffusing tension between other passengers, you're building your brain's access so that it's got past knowledge of your skill set to draw on when you need it in the future. So you are looking for ways to uh, build your capacity for conflict competence.
Yeah, we have agency and we can control our conflict reality. And we can own our conflict if we practice our skills to give our brain the information it needs to predict accurately to keep us and others safe. So if you want to learn more and to continue to listen and subscribe to the Conflict Owner's Manual.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you'll subscribe, like, share, ask questions, leave comments. We love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.